words of encouragement, trusting the work will meet with favor from the public and be accorded a hearty welcome in memory of the bygone days of the old sailing ships, I remain heartily yours, John D. Whidden. Chapter 1, 1832 to 1845. In the forecastle, the half-clipper Ariel. I was born on High Street in Boston, Massachusetts, in the year 1832, and lost my parents when I was but 5 years of age. My mother died at Mobile, Alabama, where my father was engaged in business, and my father died in Savannah, Georgia, the year after. Upon their decease, my grandparents, having taken charge of my sister and myself, we were brought up in their family at Marblehead, Massachusetts, and I attended the public schools until I attained the age of 12 years. At this time I was called a very fair scholar, well up in reading, writing, and geography, fair in arithmetic, and intensely interested in books of travel and adventure, while all works treating of the sea, tales of travel in foreign lands, shipwrecks, and everything pertaining to the ocean had a very great fascination for me. Marblehead, being a seaport town, my time, when not in school or employed around the house doing chores, was spent with my companions about the wharves, swimming or climbing about the vessels at the docks, rowing around the harbor in the small boats or dories that we would borrow from the various captains or skippers of the fishing craft, mostly schooners, from 50 to 90 tons burthen, engaged in the Grand Banks fisheries, of which at this time there was a fleet of nearly 100 sail, all hailing from and owned in Marblehead. What a treat for us boys when a square rigger, as we designated all barks, ships, and brigs, came sailing into the harbor, perhaps from Cadiz, Spain, laden with salt for the fishing fleet to take to the Grand Banks of Newfoundland for their spring fairs, and when she hauled into the wharf to discharge her cargo into the salt sheds, how we youngsters swarmed on board, exploring every nook and cranny of her, climbing over her rigging, daring each other to mount higher and higher until, with a feeling of triumph, I at last placed my cap upon the main royal truck, the highest point, and looking down saw the admiring though envious gaze of my young companions. Then again to sit around the forecastle after the work for the day was over, to see the sailors at their meals and hear them spin their yarns was happiness indeed. To go to sea, become a sailor, visit foreign lands, and in due time become the captain of a fine ship, this was the goal to be looked forward to, the great aim of our lives. It certainly was of mine, and I judge of all, or nearly all, of my playmates. My grandparents were not in favor of my adopting a sailor's life, wishing me to learn a trade, but to this I was opposed, and rang the changes upon the advantages of a seafaring life, until they gave way and consented. Shortly after this decision, on my return from school one day, I was ushered into the parlor, where sat a gentleman in conversation with my grandmother, to whom I was introduced. He was Captain James King of Salem, Massachusetts, and I learned for the first time that I was to join the ship he commanded in 2 weeks, the ship being the fine new half-clipper named the Ariel, just launched and lying at Newburyport, bound round to New York to load flour for Liverpool, England, from thence to China, she having been built for a Canton trader. This was joyful news indeed, and I went out from the parlor after making my best bow and answering all his questions in a satisfactory manner, the happiest boy in the old town. During our conversation my grandmother touched upon my good qualities, and said to Captain King that she did not see how she could part with me, I was so useful and willing to do anything about the house, such a help to her, etc., etc., to all of which I listened in considerable astonishment, for while my grandmother was one of the best of souls and very fond of me, yet I was constantly getting into trouble, and received more scoldings, no doubt richly deserved, than pettings. In fact, at this time I had fallen into disgrace, and I afterward thought it the predisposing cause of her consent being obtained.